Hey, it's Patrick, and today I'm going to show you how to install the Arlen Ness chain conversion kit on your Harley-Davidson bagger. Now, we are going to be using a 2020 Road Glide. This kit will fit 09 and up Harley baggers. If you're looking to do a performance bagger build, if you're adding a bunch of horsepower to your bike, you want to get rid of that belt, this is the kit you're going to need. This is a no modification kit, which means you're not going to need to grind or cut anything. This thing is going to bolt right on. You are going to need a few other things. You're going to need a 530 chain, you're going to need some primary fluid, and some gaskets that you'll see as we get into this. As you can see, we've already taken off our floorboards, drained our primary fluid, and unhooked our battery. There are going to be quite a few tools we need for this, and even maybe a couple of specialty tools. We'll put those all in the description below. For right now, we're going to take a 3/16 Allen and a 7/16 wrench. We're going to pull this shifter arm off, and we're going to get to work. So now that we have that shifter arm off, we're going to take our 3/16 Allen. We're going to pull all of our hardware out of our primary cover so we can take that off. I like to make a little template like this and put those screws back in where they came out of because they're different lengths, and that'll help me keep track of them, and I want to remember where they go. Also, you can see I have a numbers on here. This is the sequence to torque these when we go to put them back in. There's a certain sequence, so I just write the sequence on the template. Helps me keep everything in place. All right, so the next thing we need to do is get our tensioner out of here, our chain tensioner. This is under spring tension. Save yourself some hassle. Zip tie around this if you can, and tighten it up. Then take a 1/2-inch socket, take these two bolts out, and this whole thing will come out of here. So we gotta get to our clutch hub nut, which is behind the pressure plate here. There's 3 bolts here. These are 10mm, and you wanna loosen them up together. You don't wanna take one at a time out because it'll be uneven pressure. So just loosen them up together and take all 3 of those out so we can get behind there. Now our spring plate's off, we can pull our pressure plate off. When we take this off, all of our clutch plates can stay in here if you want. You're probably gonna lose a couple off the end. I'm just gonna go pull those off now. We're going to pull our push rod out of here just so we can keep track of it. And now we can get to the heavy lifting of taking our whole primary assembly off. So now we need to get our clutch hub and our compensator off here. They have to come off at the same time. This clutch hub nut back here is an 1 3/16. It is reverse thread, which means you're gonna have to go to the right to loosen it, which is a very important note. Up in the front here, you're gonna have to use a T70 Torx, which you may or may not have. That's a little big for most conventional toolboxes. In any event, either way, you're gonna need a bar to wedge in between these sprockets to keep them from moving when you're loosening and tightening these. You can make your own like I did here, or you can actually buy these. We sell them from gyms. Like I said, both of these are under a tremendous amount of torque and have some thread locker on them, so you're probably either gonna have to use a big breaker bar or maybe even an impact. We're gonna need to jam that up. We're gonna start with the reverse thread 1 3/16 clutch hub nut. If you're not using an impact, you have to put this in gear, lock your rear wheel with something, and then use a breaker bar or something. We're gonna use an impact because it'll break it loose easier. Oh my God. You can pull this piece off too. Basically, this stuff can stay on here because we're gonna have to pull this inner primary piece off. As long as it clears all this, that's fine. The rest of this can stay as long as you can get this off. So you need a 1/4-inch Allen and a long extension. And we're gonna take our 2 starter bolts out. They're up here in the top 2 ears of the starter. You don't need to pull the whole starter out. You just need to disconnect it from that inner primary. So I'm gonna pull those bolts loose. If they stay in the starter, that's fine, it's actually preferred. We're just gonna pull that starter loose from that inner primary. Okay. So now we need to take our inner primary off. We need to take these bolts out with a 1/2 inch. Harley recommends replacing these bolts when you take them out. So we're gonna take these out, pull our inner primary off. Probably gonna have to push on that starter to get it to come loose, and then pull it over our shift shaft so we can access our pulley, which is behind here. We might have to push that starter off there. I'm gonna grab our bolts. I'm gonna lose them. There we go. So now we have our bolts out of our inner primary. We do need to get this shifter shaft off here. There's a little tab that runs behind it that won't allow you to pull this off. So you can slip a 7/16 wrench back here onto 2 flat spots, take a 1/2 inch socket and pull this off of here. Okay. So we're going to need a 3/16 Allen to get these Allens out, to get our locking plate out of there. But then to get this nut off, I highly recommend pre-soaking it in, like we've soaked ours in PB Blaster, just so we can make sure this comes off, because these have a tendency to get good and seized on there. You're gonna need a 2 1/4 inch socket that's deep enough to get over this shaft, like this one here. The other thing you're going to need is some way to either lock that rear wheel or lock this front pulley. Jim sells this fancy tool that we're gonna use, but otherwise you need some way to hold all this stuff from moving around on you. So we're gonna take our screws out and we're going to see if we can break this loose with a breaker bar. If not, you can use an impact, whatever you need to get this off of here. We are going to be reusing this nut and this plate. Okay. So we're upgrading to a big, nasty impact. You could probably fight this, get this with a breaker bar, you could heat it up, but if you got access to a big O impact, it's probably gonna be your best chance to get this off here. I've fought these before, I've had to cut them off. All of them seem to be on here really, really tight. Let's see if our big boy will get it done. And there you have it. Now we just gotta get that out of there. So now we got the nut off the front pulley, we need to get our belt off, we need to get both of our pulleys off. We're gonna cut our belt off. We have no plans to reuse this in the future. If you don't wanna cut it off, you're gonna have to take the swing arm loose so you can get the belt past the swing arm. We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna cut the belt off. We're gonna slip the front pulley off so we can slip our new sprocket on. Then we're going to raise this bike up, take a 36mm socket so we can take our axle loose, get our rear wheel loose, so we can take the rear wheel out to put our new sprocket on. We're gonna go ahead and put our rear sprocket on. Now this is geared to match your stock gearing. So this is a 57 tooth in the back, there's a 27 tooth on the front. We're using a silver sprocket. This also comes with a black sprocket. It reuses all of the stock spacers. So just the same spacers that came out are gonna be the ones that go back in the same spots. We're going to reuse the cush drive. It's always a good idea. Take a look at that cush drive, make sure it's in good shape. Except we're gonna put this back together. We're gonna loop up our axle, slide it through there. We are not going to torque the axle down just yet. We're just gonna put it back on there and thread the nut on before we move to our front sprocket. So we got our front sprocket slid on. You see we have this little tool on here. This tool is actually from 9 Finger Fabrication. This is gonna help us torque this, and I'll talk about that here a little bit, because this is, if you don't have a tool like this, the only real way you can torque this is to put your chain on, and you can do this torque sequence afterwards. So basically, put our sprocket on, take our big nut we had so much trouble getting off, we put red Loctite on this, and Harley spec is to run this down to 100 foot-pounds, back it off, run it back down to 35 foot-pounds, and then go 40 degrees. Now that 40 degrees is gonna be a little dependent on how you can get this collar on this after. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Okay, now we need to back it off. Okay. Now we're going back to 35. Reset the old torque wrench. There's 35. We got our tool set up. We went to 100 foot-pounds. We backed it off. Now we're back to 35. I'm gonna have a mark right here at the top of my socket. So you figure 90 degrees is roughly over here somewhere. 40 is gonna be in here. Like, so this is not an exact science at this point. We're gonna try to get this as tight as we can to here. I may end up switching to a breaker bar instead of this ratchet, and then we still have our locking plate to put on. That's about as far as I'm getting that. Let's see if let's see if we can get our plate on there. Oh, look at that. Lined right up. So I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on my Allen bolts, take my 3/16 Allen and tighten them up. All right, now that that's on, we can move on to putting our chain on. So our sprockets are all on. Now we're gonna feed our chain through. This is a 530 chain. Ours is actually 150 link. You can get away with 140 link on most of these baggers. We're gonna feed that through here, back around. We're going to use a chain breaker to cut the chain, so to speak, to take out the links we're not gonna need. And then we're going to use a rivet style master link to put that back together. Now it is important when you're determining like the length of the chain, where you're gonna cut the chain or break the chain at, to have your axle adjuster set kind of in the middle of your adjustment. You don't want to have too little of a chain on there and not have any adjustment to like tighten it up or loosen it up. So you want to set that kind of in the middle of the adjustment. Once that's done, we're going to go ahead and torque our axle down. And just as a reference, we'll come back to this, but you want about 1 inch of deflection in there. You want about 1 inch of deflection. And then after we're done, we also want to go back after about 50 or 100 miles and check the chain again, because chains will stretch. Let's get to feeding our chain through. This one right here. You will need some sort of chain breaker to push the pin out of the link to get your chain to the proper length. We're using a rivet style master link, which means we're gonna have to use this tool again to flatten out the rivets, the pins coming through. If you're using a clip style master link, it also helps to have a tool like this to press the plate, the new plate on the link down. If you don't have one of these tools to put the chain back together, you could use vice grips to press that pin down to get the clip style link on. But if you're using a rivet style master link, you definitely need a specialty tool, and also going to need a chain breaker for sure to get it to length. Now we just need to mush our rivets down and adjust our axle. So we want to set up our chain with about 1 inch of deflection, which ours is pretty well set at. Once you have that set, you can go ahead and re-torque your axle to 95 foot-pounds. Remember, in about 50 or 100 miles, you should recheck this to see if there was any chain stretch. Bob's your uncle. Don't forget, very important, to put the clip back on the end of your axle. So now we're gonna put our inner primary and our starter back on. There's a gasket on probably on the back of your inner primary, like mine's stuck here. You need to replace that gasket. Then we're going to take our hardware and put this back in a certain order. Now Harley recommends you replace these because they have a little gasket on the inside. We're gonna torque these 26 to 28 foot-pounds, and we're gonna do it in a sequence. That sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's basically a star pattern. Once we get this on here, we're gonna go around the other side. We're gonna slide our starter back into our inner primary. If it's a little bit tough, grease up that O-ring and it'll help you get that in there. And then we're gonna take a 1/4 inch Allen and we'll torque those 2 bolts that hold the starter in to 24 foot-pounds. Sweet. Okay, we're gonna put our primary components back in here, our comp sprocket and our clutch hub. We're gonna torque this comp sprocket. Remember, we gotta jam that. We're gonna torque it to 175 foot-pounds, but we're gonna torque it to 100 first, back it off half turn, and go to 175 with a T70. Make sure you use the red thread locker on that. There we go, it's on now. The back one, 1 3/16 is the socket size. Remember, that is a reverse thread. We're gonna use red thread locker on that. We're gonna torque that anywhere 70 to 80 foot-pounds. Now, to be able to torque that, I'm gonna go ahead and put my clutch back together. We're gonna remember to put our pusher back in here for our clutch, our push rod tube. Now that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to pop this snap ring on here so I can take this piece out. For watching at home, that went way too smooth. Then I'm gonna put my pressure plate back on. I'm gonna torque our spring plate to 70 to 100 inch-pounds with a 10 millimeter, and then we can do our final torques to the 175 and the 70 to 80 foot-pounds on the big pieces. We're right in the middle, 75 foot-pounds. It's 100. Back it off. Half turn. Got the torque wrench turned all the way up. Got her on high. All right. Oh yeah. That's the good stuff. There we go. See if we can get the same amount of cooperation going in as we got going out. This might be a fight. There we go. Bam! Then we're gonna put our chain tensioner back in. Remember, it's all zip tied down. Throw some blue Loctite on here. We're gonna put it in under the chain, torque this 21 to 24 foot-pounds with a 1/2 inch socket. Once it's all torqued, you can cut your zip tie off and slide it out. So now we need to get our cover on and get some fluid in this thing. So make sure your drain plug is in and torqued anywhere from 14 to 21 foot-pounds. We're gonna put a new primary gasket on. We're gonna put our cover on. Remember, we're gonna put a little dab of blue Loctite on there, but we have a sequence to tighten these up in. And we're gonna tighten these to 12 to 13 foot-pounds. I'm gonna take a 3/16 Allen and baby impact. If you're gonna use an impact with this, be extremely careful. Just barely touch them, and then go back and torque them. Fluid time. After that, we're gonna pull off our clutch inspection cover right here. And we're gonna put in anywhere from 38 to 45 ounces. Harley says if it's wet or if it's dry, this would be considered dry, so it's probably gonna use all 45 ounces of fluid. That's 32 American ounces of the good stuff. Milwaukee Twins Premium Chain Case Oil, made in the United States of America. How tricky do we wanna get? Okay, so there's 13. So now that our fluid's in, we can put our clutch inspection cover back on. Need a T27, you're gonna torque those in a star pattern to 84 to 100 inch-pounds. Then we're gonna take a 1/2 inch, put our bolt back through our shift linkage up here. We're gonna put our shifter arm back on with our 3/16. We'll be wrapped up. So we're all wrapped up. We did use quite a few tools, even a few specialty tools. Now you don't need a lift, although it would be very helpful, but you do need a flat jack to get that rear wheel off the ground. If you're a pretty decent mechanic, you can have this done in a day, but it's gonna be a full day. If you're not quite so proficient, give yourself a little bit more time, maybe like a couple of days over a weekend. If you have any questions about anything you've seen in the video, go ahead and hit that info tab on your desktop or mobile device. That'll take you to the product detail page where you can read other riders' reviews and more specs about the product. If you still have questions, feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about what works best for you, your motorcycle, and your budget. I am Patrick. Thank you for watching. Now go work on those motorcycles.